Dear advisors, welcome. Today we come together to discuss the options how to eliminate the risk of nuclear threat in Northern Korea. So first I would like to give the floor to Secretary of the State in order to advise. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I am grateful for this opportunity to address the situation at hand. The threat posed by North Korea's nuclear program is among the gravest our nation confronts today. The United States does not and never will acknowledge North Korea as a nuclear state. North Korea's provocative and destabilizing actions have confined and impoverished its people, and it continues to abuse numerous UN Security Council resolutions. Past efforts have failed to stop North Korea's unlawful weapons programs and nuclear and ballistic missile tests. With each provocation, North Korea endangers the stability in Northeast Asia and poses a growing threat to our allies and the United States. North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons is an urgent national security threat and top foreign policy priority. Madam President, the policy of strategic patience has come to an end. We have to explore a new range of security, diplomatic, and economic measures, and all options are on the table. However, if North Korea takes actions that threaten South Korean forces or our own forces, that will be met with an appropriate response. Furthermore, I propose that there should be open, direct talks with North Korea as long as the agenda is right, which is the denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula. We have to convince them that they do not need these weapons to secure the existence of their regime, and we do not seek a collapse of the regime. But what we seek is a denuclearized Korean Peninsula, and I believe that China shares this goal and is beginning to question whether North Korea is a liability. I propose that all nations take the following 3 actions beginning today. First, we call on state members of the United Nations to fully implement the commitments that they have made regarding North Korea. This includes all measures required and resolutions 2321 and 2270. Those nations have not fully enforced those resolutions discredit this body. Secondly, we call on countries to suspend or downgrade diplomatic relations with North Korea. North Korea exploits its diplomatic privileges to fund its illicit nuclear missile technology programs, and constraining its diplomatic activity will cut off a flow of needed resources. In the light of North Korea's recent actions, normal relations with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea are simply not acceptable. Thirdly, we must increase North Korea's financial isolation. We must levy new sanctions on Democratic People's Republic of Korea entities and individuals supporting its weapon and missile programs, and tighten those that are already in place. In conclusion, thanks to our efforts at the United Nations Security Council, we are handing off to the next administration a strong foundation for increasing pressure on Pyongyang that will be critical to address these threats. Twice this year, the UN Security Council came together to pass the toughest resolutions ever on North Korea in an attempt to get Pyongyang to change its course. In the coming months, we must remain steadfast through diplomacy, deterrence, and pressure to build a sustained, comprehensive, and relentless campaign that increases the cost on North Korea until it makes a strategic decision to return to serious talks on denuclearization and complies with its international obligations. However, we remain prepared to defend ourselves and our allies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we give the floor to Secretary of Defense. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons seems to be going in a very reckless direction, which makes it a national security threat and top foreign policy priority. With each provocation, North Korea jeopardizes stability in Northeast Asia and poses a growing threat to our allies and the United States homeland. Necessary action needs to be taken before North Korea completes the development of its intercontinental ballistic missile that could potentially reach the American territory. The fact that North Korea have had series of failed ballistic missile tests does not mean it will succeed someday. So, Mr. President, I suggest that the United States bolster its regional ballistic missile defense system by fielding the same missile defense system in Japan that it currently has installing in South Korea, and also set up a ballistic missiles defense system within the U.S. territory. We must not take chances or underestimate North Korea's nuclear capability. As we know, diplomacy as a means to bring North Korea to denuclearization in the past have greatly failed. For diplomacy to ever be an option that North Korea may consider, a message has to be sent to them that a military strike is indeed an option on the table, and we will not hesitate to use it if the need arises. While we are open to negotiation, we must remain prepared to defend our allies and the United States homeland.
Thank you so much. Now we give the floor to our national security.
Thank you, Madam President. As we all know, North Korea's range of missile power has progressed over the years since World War II, and where it has moved from artillery rockets to medium-range missiles, where this has actually been, or has started being a threat to the United States. However, the biggest concern today is its recent failure on the nuclear test of ICBM. Despite North Korea nuclear fail, we as a country need to establish a way forward to stop this threat. It is important to note that North Korea has been making moves since 2003, where it withdrew from the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, and even since has been absent from Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. These acts alone have shown that North Korea has decided to be a rogue state, and that it needs policies or measures to be brought forward to deal with it. With the case of nuclear threat, all options are on the table, and there is no need to limit the issue of keeping our national security intact. At this very moment, the greatest force to dissolve any kind of threat and hold North Korea against the US is for us as the United States to have a united front, both internal and external. The forming of allies of US and China on the control of nuclear threat has begun during the six-party talks. Is one of the biggest achievements since the US cannot fight the battle alone, and we need peace as a whole. One of the major strategies to keep North Korea on a standstill will to further tighten the UN Security Council resolution of 1874 that focused on the blocking of North Korea missile and nuclear imports, because without the raw material itself, then there will be no nuclear threat. Our administration apparent aim is to pursue an international approach to rally against the pressure from multiple capitals to force North Korea to end its nuclear weapons program. Even at this point of breaking the regime with sanction that will keep our national security stable, there are other aspects we need to incorporate. On the other hand, a strong US should push for sanctions backed by the threat of a preemptive US attack on North Korea in case of further nuclear developments, since at the moment, we don't know what North Korea is planning. We could push Russia closer, not only to North Korea, and also China close to South Korea. If we were to protect the neighboring countries of North Korea, then we as a country are also progressing internationally. The idea of bringing more countries as our allies that have past relations with North Korea will end the nuclear threat and be a huge advantage to us. Moscow has believed it can also have a seat at the table, not only because its role as a border state, but also as a country that has full diplomatic relations both with us, the United States, and South Korea, and of course, Japan. The latest failed tests of North Korea can for us as the United States be a platform for us to have more policies or reinforce measures that will help our country. However, we should not sit back and think that because North Korea is failing now, it will still fail in the future. That is why, Madam President, we have a wide range of military, diplomatic, and economic wide range of tools that are at disposal for you if need be. Thank you.
May I follow up with a question?
Thank you.
Is the threat of North Korea more important than the threat of ISIS, as they have already attacked Belgium and France with terrorist attacks? Are we under threat?
Okay. Thank you for that question. I believe that the North Korea attack is more direct to us and is more important because North Korea is not only targeting us as a country, but it's also targets us as a country. It's going to affect us economically, international-wise. So I think that the North Korea attack is more important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Secretary Energy.
Thank you, Madam President. For years, the United States and the international community have tried to negotiate an end to North Korea's nuclear and missile development and its export of ballistic missile technology. Those efforts have been replete with periods of crisis, stalemate, and tentative progress towards the denuclearization, and North Korea has long been a key challenge for the global nuclear non-proliferation regime. Following the collapse of the NPT agreement in 2002, North Korea claimed that it had withdrawn from the NPT in January 2003 and once again began operating its nuclear facilities. The second major diplomatic efforts were the six-party talks initiated in August of 2003, which involved China, Japan, North Korea, Russia, South Korea, and the United States. In between periods of stalemate and crisis, those talks arrived at critical breakthroughs in 2005, when North Korea pledged to abandon all nuclear weapons and existing nuclear programs and return to the NPT, and in 2007, when the parties agreed on a series of steps to implement that 2005 agreement. Now, my Department of Energy's goals are to formulate and evaluate energy-related measures as part of policy options, and also to gauge the implications of foreign policy decisions on U.S. energy security and environmental concerns. Now, my options, in order to ensure that we are able to accomplish these above-mentioned objectives, this agency proposes these options. The United States should redouble efforts to lead coordinated multilateral action to oppose North Korea's nuclear status, while still leaving a denuclearized North Korea a route for regime survival. At the same time, the United States and its allies should emphasize to Pyongyang that expanded sanctions will be relieved if North Korea takes meaningful, concrete steps towards denuclearization, such as resuming cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, by allowing the return of international inspectors to the country. The second option is for the United States and South Korea to strengthen deterrence against North Korean military provocations at the demilitarized zone and the northern limits line by coming up with a detailed escalation ladder comprising tailored responses to match different types and levels of provocations. To counter North Korea's growing missile capabilities, the United States and South Korea should obtain appropriate defense mechanisms, such as the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense, the THAAD. Now, the use of force will most likely escalate the tensions between both states. Although negotiations might be more time-consuming, it is highly recommended that this path be followed, so as to avoid added unnecessary tensions and loss of lives, and avoid creating potential backlash from other countries and NGOs alike. In the wake of this event, it is necessary to seek for cooperation from not only concerned or regional state, but also the world at large, with more strict and tighter sanctions put in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving me the opportunity to address the situation on the North Korea. So this memorandum calls for the President on a highly renewed concern on the growing threat from the DPRK. Prior to the recent events we are encountering now, we can see that there is a clear need for an immediate action. So for the past 20 years, friendly diplomatic methods and sanctions imposed on them has been proven ineffective due to the growing number of violations and nuclear tests that has been happening recently. So here, the only way we can bring a peaceful and stable North Asia and the world itself is to dismantle the existing government and its nuclear capability. The threat of nuclear attack by North Korea on Seoul or Tokyo is real. In fact, the United States itself. So the DPRK is most likely to develop the capability to strike the United States mainland. After all, the resistance and recent tests prove that there is no reason to think that the North Korea will change its behavior under the current sanctions. So the United States should call for the United Nations and all members to act before North Korea does. So I would like to propose the following policy options which can be implemented by Madam President. So here, the U.S. Should call for the United Nations and all members into ensuring the full implementation of sanctions imposed for now. We know that sanctions rarely work overnight, but the main thing we have to do is to confirm whether all the member states are fully implementing those sanctions. However, threats keep increasing day by day, so being patient doesn't seem to be a good strategy at this point in time. So China, as the main ally of North Korea, should put more effort on the implementation of the sanctions. So due to the significant amount of dependence North Korea has on China, it can easily make them face their mistakes by adopting the sanctions from every sector coming from the DPRK government, which mostly appears to be economic. So the second one here, we all know that at this stage, we have to have an open mind. So here, a preemptive act still remains an option as a result of the growing threats. So we have to protect the United States, its citizens, and its mainland. Also, let's not forget about the North Korea, the citizens who are living there. They are vulnerable, living in a nation of sorrow and frozen time. While the world sees the gleaming buildings of Pyongyang and its nuclear empire built with the bricks of oppression and starvation. So it has swept the land for over 60 years. So a strong need for humanitarian intervention is another reason for the invasion of North Korea too. So the UN and other members should call for for a renewed defensive and security alerted measure and try to avoid any act that will strengthen or support the DPRK government. So therefore, I strongly advise on an immediate occupation with the approval of member states in order to stop the existing regime. Finally, there should be full reinstatement of anti-missile system in South Korea, thereby countering any incoming attack from the North Korea. Doing that, the United States can be able to stop any missile attack from the DPRK also, and there will be full containment of the regime. The regional neighbors should be fully alerted with their defense system and ready at any time. So I believe that the international community needs to come together in order to overcome the existing threat and restore balance in the nuclear war we live in today. We all know that there are states that are potentials to the development of nuclear weapons. So stopping the DPRK is a good way to send a message to the states that are trying to emulate them. So thank you, Madam President, for giving me the floor. Yeah.
My question is, how can we cooperate when China is one of the P5 members?
Well, the first proposal here is try to bring China to cooperate very well in trying to tighten the sanctions, because right now North Korea are enjoying a significant amount of leverage in some leakages in China. So by blocking those leakages in China, North Korea can become vulnerable in that aspect. But as I said, preemptive strike still remains an option despite the diplomatic and economic factors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'll give the floor to Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam President. It's my great pleasure to attend these first executive meetings of our administration. In my capacity as the Honorable Attorney General of the United States of America, I acknowledge receipt that addressed to you by the Secretary of the State, National Security, the representative of the UN. Recently, together with the copies of the memorandum and the annexed date May 27, 2017, the United States of America is considering the content of memorandum and accompanying annex and will respond in due time straight to the point. Subject to what is said below, the United States of America reserves its position on all of the points made in the covering letters. North Korea is once again attempting to destroy our warship across the Korean Peninsula. North Korean army are ready to give an order to go to war. They are willing to ready and defend their country without the fear, though we know they cannot attack our nation. But we need to be cautious of the threat, Madam President. Failures of the sort are seriously increasing in frequency, Madam President. Something has to be done, and if something is not done as soon as possible, the interests of the United States of America in that region and across the world as a whole, and even the presidency, could be seriously damaged. Madam President, our Central Intelligence Agency informed us that North Korea is still ongoing with the nuclear activities at a testing site in Pyongyang. It has been confirmed that there is no movement of people and vehicles across the area, indicating a test preparations of the nuclear weapon. Increasing the number of U.S. military in North Korean Peninsula should be considered. Recently, North Korea tested its intercontinental ballistic missile to hit the United States of America, but it failed. And the media are still saying that they are celebrating the North Koreans' army. With such massive militaries and nuclear tests, we should not rely on what the media are saying. We should take action and protect the lives and the properties of the United States citizens. Finally, the best way to solve this tension is to have formal diplomatic relations with the North Koreans. Madam President, as world leader, you can visit the North Korea to negotiate with the President Kim Jong-un, because he is invited. If he is invited, we'll see it as a threat. As you stated earlier, it will be an honor to meet the North Korean president, and I'm certain, Madam President, he will be glad to meet you. At this stage, as the United States agent, I can say that America is unwilling to take whatever course action necessary. God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Madam President. North Korea is among the most talked about countries in the international area in recent years. The most important reason for this is that the level of North Korea's nuclear weapons development program has reached a level that can no longer be underestimated. Along with not being officially explained, the views expressed by all the parties are that North Korea has won 2 or 3 nuclear titles, or acquired the science and technological capability and knowledge that can be developed in a short time. On the other hand, the distant North Korea has long pursued to produce nuclear weapons and to develop ballistic missiles that can send them to distance incredibly much. The point reached today is clear that the reasons behind North Korea's unwillingness to develop nuclear weapons are still valid, not affected by periodic and conjunctural developments. The views of North Korea, which is one of the most basic indicators of having nuclear weapons, that nuclear testing can be carried out in the coming years, are put forward by experts who are closely following this country. North Korea may be the fourth country to become a state with nuclear weapons, which in the case of such a development has been signed in 1968 and has been withdrawn from the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. In accordance with the treaties, there is a development that is officially or contrary to the treaties. In fact, a state has a nuclear weapon, the region in which the state is in question, and it is followed with sensitivity and anxiety all over the world. Indeed, the irreversible destruction that nuclear weapons can deliver through the greatest environment is deeply irrelevant to any countries, regardless of these weapons. However, the extent of nuclear weapons, which is misunderstanding and the almost impossibility of destroying these weapons on the earth in the near future, has given birth to more attention as to which country has more possessions than the extent of nuclear weapons. It is believed that some nations with nuclear weapons will act more responsible than others, while others will be irresponsible and cause a nuclear war to begin. For this reason, it is questioned that what the intention of the countries are and what their intention are, and try to prevent countries whose suspicions of their intention are to have weapons of nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction. Especially in the recent years, as the United States has been the leader in the direction and other states have been helping themselves in this regard. As of February 2004, it is not possible to determine exactly what the North Korea's nuclear weapons program is, because the inspectors of the Atomic Energy Agency were removed from the country and the monitoring device installed in the facilities were dismantled. There are various opinions on why North Korea is going to such a way. The clearest of these is the core expectation of the US administration that North Korean administration has consistently voiced during the recent crisis. North Korea wants the United States to recognize itself, establish diplomatic relations, and sign the non-aggregation treaty between the two countries. On the other hand, the US demanded that North Korea open all its nuclear facilities before inspecting any condition and makes the nuclear weapons program unusable. Some United States experts say that North Korea should not escalate with the careful observation of the possibilities and capabilities it has developed in the nuclear subcontrol, that Kim Jong-il's primary purpose is to maintain its dictatorial regime rather than military. It seems that the most effective fight against the problem of the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction is the unification of the force of anti-expansion countries. In the face of spreading, the individual struggles of the countries will not bring success and create a situation open to speculation. Thus, well serious steps have been taken in the last few years to make strong anti-expansion regime intact, and some results are being received. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Going on to the General Advisor.
Thank you, Madam President. A little background information regarding the situation. Ever since North Korea pulled out of the NPT in 2003, its growing hunger of being a permanent nuclear nation has taken a toll on the US and its allies. It has conducted 5 nuclear tests, although it's yet to have a nuclear weapon that has the capacity of striking the US and deterring its missiles. It has, however, achieved nuclear capacity that can strike its neighboring Asian countries, particularly Japan and South Korea. This can put a strain on the relationship the US has with South Korea and Japan, especially when the US fails to protect South Korea from the nuclear attack from North Korea. And with this growing tension within the Asian peninsula, both South Korea and Japan may want to defend themselves by building their own nuclear weapons, which will in turn encourage other regional countries in getting nuclear capabilities, thereby dismissing the sole aim and purpose of the NPT. Madam President, as your General Advisor, I have 3 principal objectives regarding the situation. The first one is to stop and prevent North Korea from achieving its ultimate goal. The second is to strengthen US relationships with its Asian allies, particularly South Korea and Japan. The third is to foster new diplomatic
relations with China in order for China to support the US in stopping North Korea in its nuclear ambitions. To accomplish the aforementioned objectives, I propose 3 options. The first one is to implement a defensive airstrike against North Korea's nuclear facilities. The United States could implement a defensive airstrike against North Korea. This is possibly the most risky option, taking into consideration the millions of lives of North Koreans at stake. But looking at it critically, it would be a wise choice stopping them than them actually starting a war we would not be able to handle at the end. The US, as of now, are a great advantage due to the fact that North Korea does not yet have ICBMs that can hit US. It is evident that the president of North Korea would stop at nothing until he achieves his goal of having a nuclear capable of hitting the US. And currently, he does not care about the present economic problems facing in his country, nor does he care about the consequences his nuclear ambitions might bring. If we can strategically eliminate North Korea's nuclear facilities without putting the citizens at stake or at risk, it would be to the good of not only for the US or its allies, but the world at large. The second option I propose is the protection of South Korea and Japan through military and nuclear means. The US could also contain this nuclear threat by providing military and nuclear arms to South Korea and Japan. These 2 countries are a great risk due to the fact that they are situated within North Korea. North Korea can decide to strike South Korea at any time it will. This will cause a strain in the relations between US and South Korea, whom the US swore to protect in case from any attack from North Korea. Even Japan is at risk. With its booming economy and North Korea's declining, North Korea may strike Japan to gain economic benefits in return for peace. Due to these tensions arising in the Asian Peninsula, both Japan and South Korea would want to protect themselves by building nuclear weapons, which will in turn lead other countries such as India and Pakistan to acquire nuclear weapons, thereby shifting from the sole aim and purpose of the NPT Treaty. It is hereby highly important that we have the full support of these countries and protect them in any way possible from this nuclear threat. The third option is to foster new and friendly diplomatic relations between the US and China. China, as we know, is the sole benefactor of North Korea's resources, mostly food and basic economic resources, and China is also North Korea's most loyal ally. But the relationship between China and North Korea has been strained due to North Korea's nuclear ambitions. This, however, has an advantage for the US. If the US can set aside their differences and cultivate friendly diplomatic relations with China, also with the full backing of other allies and international bodies such as the UN, the US and China would be able to impose much stricter and tighter sanctions against North Korea, such as total blockage of China's resources to North Korea, which will put North Korea economy into total decline, which will lead to its abandonment of nuclear arms due to lack of resources or none at all. The national security of the US is of utmost importance to us. We also need to consider the security of other nations as well, particularly our allies. I do advise and recommend that the options I just spoke be taken into consideration as to avoid a catastrophic nuclear war worse than the Cold War by another communist regime. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam President. North Korea is one of the failing states, have serious economic conditions, lack of human rights. She is one of the primary threats of the U.S. national security since 1950s. And now her long-range ICBMs and developing nuclear program directly threatens U.S. soil. In spite of the fact that, according to the South Korea's intelligence, North Korea's ICBM tests failing repeatedly. But it does not prove one day she will success. U.S. should not take any risk. U.S. has to take some necessary measures about that situation. and overview about military intervention. North Korea's conventional military capabilities is limited, and comparing this U.S. Army, it's ancient. But the main risk is any aggression to Japan and South Korea. Both of these states are main workforce and interdependence for the global trade and production. Any false attempt to North Korea can cause global economic crisis. Background of North Korea's nuclear development is not new. She announced to withdraw from Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but US and North Korea signed agreed framework for freezing illicit plutonium weapons program in exchange for aid. Collapse of Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 2002, North Korea began operating its nuclear facilities. Second diplomatic effort were the six-party talks in August 2003, which is involved China, Japan, North Korea, Russia, South Korea, and the US. As a result of these talks, North Korea pledged to abandon any nuclear weapons and existing nuclear programs and return to NPT. Agreed to implementing that 2015 agreement. In 2009, those talks broke down with over-verification, and North Korea's ICBM testings started. North Korea declared never return to these talks and no longer bound by agreements. Within US set up missile defense system, THAAD, to South Korea, refused by China on the Security Council. And that system provoked China for developing advanced weaponry, wants South Korea to destroy relations. China's fear about that situation is destabilizing Kim Jong-un's regime and expanding US presence in that region. Therefore, US should not do the same mistake on the Korea War years. China is a game changer of that region. If US lose China, costs will become worsened. Since July 11, 2016, US and North Korea's only diplomatic communication channel closed. For that, US should use China for diplomatic attempts to North Korea. It should provide trust between US-China relations. These last diplomatic attempts will not work. US should think about strategic military intervention with the support of the UN. Intelligence is important on that way, so that intervention should not widen. After the Afghanistan and Iraqi incidents, US public opinion is more critical for the US foreign policy. US may not directly intervene. Rebels, refugees, and defectors in the China and other neighbor states from North Korea may equip and train for the intervention and support them from the background, as like US doing now with Kurds on the Syrian and Iraq regions against ISIS. Marines, US Navy, and US Air Force should be on war position on the region. These forces may need for deterrence of any attempts from Pyongyang. At the same time, US have to submit a draft resolution on the UN Security Council. Although it will not pass with objection of Russia, China, and its alliance, US can test the stance of the other UN Security Council states. Forcing diplomatic attempts and mediation are important for the region's economical and strategical safety. If it does not work anymore, military intervention is recommended. Mentioned before the options of these that international justification is important. US should persuade in public opinion, and it's a great opportunity for the restoring US image the rest of the world. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Madam President. As May 24th, North Korean nuclear threat became a serious problem for the United States of America's national security. All NSC members and the appointed staff prepared set of options of solutions in order to prevent North Korean threat to United States national security. It is my main aim to suggest implementation of best policy for the United States of America's interest beyond any doubt. It is obvious that there is a clear North Korean nuclear threat to United States national security, as we can understand from the nuclear weapon test done by the North Korea in 2006, 2009, 2013, twice in 2016. Those nuclear weapons are expected to shut United States West Coast and killing people of 100,000. Therefore, North Korean nuclear capabilities must be destroyed by the United States of America for its interest beyond any doubt. On the other hand, alongside with the United States, our long-standing allies in the region, mainly South Korea and Japan, are under serious threat by North Korea. It is important that we should understand the subject in the context of nature of relations between United States and North Korea. There is no doubt that Korean War led North Korean aggressive nuclear weapon program so as to threat United States of America's national security. However, it is obvious that nuclear threat problem cannot be solved by restoring the relations at the present time. Therefore, as a general advisor to President, I suggest an intermediate implementation of military tools such as blockades, unilateral coalition force, special operation force in order to protect the U.S. national security and so as to achieve our goals in the region. I strongly suggest the special operation forces to destroy nuclear weapon facilities of the North Korea with the support of air forces. In addition, I suggest that a blockade alongside with special operation forces will be very beneficial and solution based on the basis of United States interest. Following the blockade and deploying of our forces to North Korea, second stage must start, which includes the invasion of North Korea in order to dissolve undemocratic regime so as to end threat to United States. Furthermore, we should promote the establishment of new government in North Korea which will be completely democratic and share the same values with us, so as to eliminate possibility of any threat to United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we'll give the floor to Lieutenant President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before the inauguration of this current administration, against the backdrop of the lingering threat from Pyongyang, North Korea, the outgoing President Barack Obama highlights the growing and significant threats from the Pyongyang nuclear ambition and long-range missile program. Mrs. President, as your general advisor on national security, this memo gives a general overview of the situation mentioned, the perceived threats, and advice on diplomatic path to follow. In 1945, following the end of the Second World War, the Allied force took over the control of North Korea, which was previously under the administration and control of Japan. In just about the same manner in which the Germany got spilted at the end of the World War II by the Allied forces, the Korean Republic was divided in similar fashion, with the northern half under the administration and control of the Soviet, and the southern path directly under the control and administration of the United States. The era of hostility began by looking at administration and control of the Korean Republic, and its division was supposed to be temporary with the intention to democratize both regions. However, by the 1948, a communist leader from the North Korean People's Army manipulated the leadership of the Soviet-led administration in the North to neglect elections in the region, which was to be monitored by the United Nations. By the end of the 1948, the hostility between the North and South effectively led to the breakup of the country, with the Republic of Korea established in the southern part of the country under the leadership of Kim Il-sung. In the North, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, under the leadership of Premier Kim Il-sung, was formally declared, and this was with the support of former USSR. Thus, whereas the United States left the South in summer in 1949 weak and unstable, and the USSR helped the North advance its military capability with the help of China, they had developed and modernized their national army.
The peak of hostility between the North and South resulted in a 3-year war that lasted from June 25th, 1950 to 1955, with the United Nations, United States, China, USSR actively involved in the conflict, supporting one side against the other. Thus, from the period between 1970 to 1980s, diplomatic relations between the North and South on one hand and the North with the rest of the world and on the other became very intense and conflictual, continuing into the new millennium. And this is despite the fact that both nations formally joined the United Nations in the 1990s. And effort towards the unification of both the South and the North has not yielded any positive breakthrough ever since. By looking at the missile test, following the death of Kim Il-sung in July 1994, the revolutionary leader of the North, his son, Kim Jong-il, ascended the seat of leadership in the country, heading the country's powerful National Defense Commission, adopting an ideology which puts the national army first. Kim Jong-il effectively transformed North Korea from its traditional communist ideology to a full military dictatorial regime. Although the country's nuclear ambition in the 1990s under its new leader was overshadowed by the severe famine, flooding, and eventually drought, which the country experienced. The country did not abandon its planned desires to build massive missile and military hardware. Thus, whereas North Korea is heavily dependent on international assistance and aid to feed its people, it also remains steadfast in its nuclear ambition. Beginning from 2005, the country began its massive underground test of its enriched nuclear arsenal in its nuclear development program. This is despite international condemnation and the threat of sanction from the international community. In 2011, the passing away of Kim Jong-il and his son, Kim Jong-un, the current leader of North Korea, taking up the leadership of the country and following in the footsteps of his father. Hence, in more recent time, the advancement in North Korea's nuclear program is revealed by the frequent long-range ballistic missile tests by the rogue state, according to security experts. Thus, according to CBNC World News in 2007, the successful test and launch of the so-called mid to long-range ballistic missile is an indication of the advancement of North Korea's drive towards building missiles with intercontinental capability and to hit targeted infrastructure. Threats to national security interests. The apparent success of North Korea in its most recent ballistic missile program shows the vulnerability of the Korean Peninsula and indeed United States to potential missile targets from Pyongyang. This development is seen as a significant step by North Korea in hitting targets in United States, with the new ballistic missile fired landing in the sea close to Russia. This move is seen as a clear message to the leadership of South Korea under its new president, which has shown interest for dialogue in settling the historical long hostility between the divided peninsula. Although to effectively hit its target, the United States, the North, will have to develop missile capability, capable of a flight in excess of 8,000 kilometers and about 4,800 miles from Korea Peninsula. The recent launch, coded Hwasong-12, flew an average of 787 kilometers, about 2.111 kilometers. Hence, while it appears that the North is still far from its ambition, the continued advancement in nuclear capability and the defense stance of North Korea calls for a more decisive and elaborate coordination of diplomatic policies to curtail the excesses of the North. In the end, the security interests of the United States in the Korean Peninsula and the national security of its key allies in the region, the South Korea and Japan, is significantly threatened. by looking at the nature of U.S. response, although the recent United States military maneuvers in Korean Peninsula has increased defiance of the North, putting further strain on the possibility of dialogue and diplomacy to resume reunification talks. And it is important to reconsider some of the America's response to nuclear program of North Korea. And in this regard, the latest stance by United States government to meet with the leadership of Korea and the later acceptance of this consideration is a good effort to soften the tense diplomatic situation in the Korean Peninsula. First, U.S. policy option should engage North Korea in a rather diplomatic way, restart a renewed six-party peace talks, effectively engaging North Korean neighbors in the peninsula with the hope of finding an amicable solution and resolution of the North Korean nuclear and ballistic missile program. And this policy option will help the United States, China, Japan, and South Korea. And this may also call for softening of international sanctions on Pyongyang and the resumption of international food aid to the country. In all, to convince the leadership of the North to tread the path of peace and diplomacy. The benefit of this position to the United States under the current administration will be the possibility to restore peace to the Korean Peninsula and the likelihood of discouraging Pyongyang to continue its nuclear development program. First, under the United Nations,
what are your
policies options? Okay. In my capacity as general advisor, I urge the United States to follow the path of international consensus on the North Korean issue, and one being the diplomatic engagements, dialogue, and also the reenacting of six-party talks, and also a possible scale down of international sanctions on the North.
Who are
the six-party talks? We have the North Korea, the South Korea, the United States, Japan, Russia, and China. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'll give the floor to General Advisor.
Thank you, Madam President. So what prompts me to address this memorandum is the increasing reports in the news and local newspapers on the North Korean issue. The more this issue is discussed in the media, the more citizens are becoming frightened. However, the North Korean-United States relations come of no surprise to many of us, as these two parties have had a prolonged hostile tension between them, beginning primarily during the Korean War. Over the years, not only has North Korea continuously threatened the United States of America with its nuclear weapons, but it has also detained some of our people, such as the two American journalists on March 17, 2009, Yuna Lee and Laura Link, at the Korean border close to China, and other U.S. citizens, causing more strain to the relations. Although the two parties have tried to be cordial in the form of the U.S. economic assistance of food and other emerging aid to North Korea during times of famine and natural disasters, the U.S. has also assisted U.S. NGOs in providing aid to fight the outbreak of infectious diseases and to improve farming practices in the rural areas. And it has also tried to lessen sanctions imposed on North Korea. Since the enactment of the new administration following April 3, 2017, U.S. missile strike in Shayrat, Syria, in response to the chemical attack, tensions have mounted as the president has weighed further military options against North Korea's ballistic missile program. In addition, North Korea has broken through the nuclear barrier and possesses fissile material sufficient for 20 to 25 nuclear weapons. North Korea is racing to develop an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of hitting the continental U.S. President Kim Jong-un has declared his country to be in the final stage of preparation of the test launch. So my advice as a general advisor is for the president to try working on the relationship with North Korea and find ways to rectify this relationship, make up new peace treaties to support this relationship so that we can protect our citizens. However, if this does refuse, extreme measures must be taken in order to protect our people. The USA needs to impose economic sanctions and diplomacy to persuade North Korea to dismantle its nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs. We also need to prepare for the West by strengthening our military presence in countries in Asia. We also need to strengthen our alliance formed in the past World War II security alliance between Washington and Tokyo, have a strong military presence in South Korea, and seek help from China to combat the ongoing issues in North Korea. Although the historical relations between the US and China are plagued with mistrust, as president, you need to work on this relationship because with the help of China, we can have more leverage over North Korea. Also, most of our alliances may seem to fail because the president uses language full of profanity on social media, and this may result in receiving not much respect from our alliances and North Korea too. And I'd like to quote one of the tweets where you say, China has been, I quote, China has been taking out massive amounts of money and wealth from the US in a totally one-sided trade, but won't help with North Korea. Nice. Such tweets will not help us gain respect or move forward or try to rectify our relationship with China, because we need them to help us with North Korea. Your tweets have the power to shape international relations. And then also I would like to add on that since the CNN has been totally removed in North Korea, so we don't have any more communication from North Korea with the US, and I'd advise you to try and work on this so that we can closely monitor their activities and remain ready for any retaliation against the US. This is
Thank you so much. You mentioned about the CNN and about in order to improve further. So would you suggest, like, which kind of, do you have any examples how we can do it?
To bring CNN back?
Yes.
Maybe we arrange a meeting with President Kim Jong-un and try convince him that we're ready to make a peace treaty. Like what I'm saying on how we reflect ourselves on social media, it's also giving him more reason not to respect us or not to listen to us anymore. So I feel like we need to stand united and show him that we're serious and that we won't do any retaliation towards him and his country, because he also wants to protect his country and feels like us as USA, we're a threat. So if we come together and talk and find a way to it, I'm sure we can bring CNN back to North Korea.
All right, thank you so much. Now we'll give the floor to Vice President.
To begin with, I would like to thank you all for your efforts and recommendations. We acknowledge the threat of a nuclear war, especially by a country with a leader that is reckless in actions. It is also important to note that he has a whole nation following an ideology and worshipping it, being completely isolated out of the world. And we have so many instances that women and children and people trying to flee out of the country into the south, which is one of our allies, as many of you mentioned. Mr. President, I believe that our nation's security comes before any other concern, and to eliminate this risk, we should take action today. Making America great again, keeping our people safe, and freeing the people of North Korea from an authoritarian ruler. With our interference, we bring them basic human rights and free trade, exposing them again to the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank everyone for your wonderful advices. Now, Vice President and I will go to caucus in order for us to make the decision. I will come back to you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. As we know, to make America great again is and has to be our main goal. So for that, we know that national security is the most important. Ladies and gentlemen, we know when North Korea will develop its nuclear weapon, the first one who will be threatened by the nuclear weapon, it's South Korea and Japan. That's why Vice President and I decided to place terminal high altitude air defense in South Korea and Japan, in order for them to defend themselves, in order for North Korea to feel that to feel the threat, in order for North Korea to feel that he cannot do certain things that it does right now. So therefore, this is our decision. If you have any question, I'm open to the question.
Thanks.
No? Thank you so much. And it was, again, my pleasure to see you here. And together we'll bring America's Together we'll make America great again. Thank you. Seriously.